Toes, Goals, and Toes is me, V-Necks, and V-Cards, and today I have a cool little thing that I'm doing. I'm doing another Vloggy Talky thing. I haven't done one of these in quite a long time. It's been 4 months maybe since I put one out, and I really want to focus on those because I want those to be the focus of my channel. So yeah, we're going to do that. Today I'm going to be talking about education and my views on the subject of education. I want to kind of preface this with a slight disclaimer. I like the idea of education and like what's behind it, what it signifies, like learning and bettering yourself. And I don't think that we should do away with education entirely, but more on that in a second. So, education. It's something that we all have to go through. It's something that's so ingrained into our minds that is important. From an early age even. Where you have to you're told early on that you need to do this or else you won't be successful and you won't get anything done and you won't even have a future. And I understand why that happens. I completely understand where it has to be important, where you have to kind of push this idea that you need school to better yourself. And I completely agree with that. I completely agree that school is supposed to better you. It's supposed to get you ready for the future. Now, my issue with education is that I'm not a fan of the way it's going and how it currently stands in modern society. I don't think that we need it, per se, in its current form at least. We don't need it in the current form that it holds. And by that I mean, education as it stands currently is a cycle of rote memorization in which you are just trying to memorize these things for standardized tests. And that's the only important thing, is the numbers that you get on these tests, the scores for these tests. And I can kind of disagree with that because you're not learning for anything for the future. Like, you're not learning anything to stay in your head. And you're just going to learn things only to forget them the next week after the test. And I do not agree with that. I feel that school needs to teach you things that you're going to remember for a very long time, and things that you can apply to your everyday life, or things that you know are at least useful to you. For example, things such as medicine or first aid. Like, very basic first aid would be very helpful for anyone, in my opinion. And I can kind of just not see the purpose of learning all these advanced mathematics, like just functions and things of that nature. You can argue that they provide critical thinking and they help you, just critically think. But there are other ways of performing that same feat in children and kind of teaching them how to think properly, I guess. And I just don't agree with teaching all of these subjects that aren't going to be inherently useful in the future. When am I ever going to use calculus is the question. When am I ever going to use that over something like, the skill to change a tire, or to keep keep a savings account and, learn how to budget. And I think that's far more useful than things such as trigonometry or calculus. And I understand that some job fields will be using calculus and things of that nature, because calculus does have its applications, and I'm not going to argue against that. It does have uses for some people. I am not one of those people, especially not with a cell phone, because I have a calculator with me every day. And that's an issue because, we're teaching all these math things, but we now have an incredibly powerful computer in our pockets at all times, and it's kind of it very much makes learning advanced math kind of redundant when we live in such an advanced society where it's not as needed. And I would argue that it would be better to teach students things that they would like to learn or that they think will be beneficial to them in the future, such as things they just want to pursue. Like, for example, computer things. I'm a big fan of computers, and I would have much rather learned something to do with computers as a whole than just learn math, because most of the computer stuff I've learned is largely self-taught, and it's very hard to self-teach a lot of things for computers, at least for me. I do know, I know some things. I know some things enough to call me an above-average computer user, but the issue is, it would be much easier if I could, if I would have learned it from a teacher who would have, taught me the foundations of it and built up, and that would have been far more beneficial to me than trying to self-teach myself. And we do live in such an advanced society where cell phones are common, and these practically incredible computers are in our pockets at all times, but a lot of people don't know internet safety. And I feel like schools should, teach that. They should teach people how to be safe on the internet, and along with other computer basic skills. Because for me, I knew a lot of kids in high school, because I recently just graduated high school. I knew a lot of children and teens and things like that who did not know how to use PowerPoint properly. And in turn of using PowerPoint, for example, when they want to put a background in one of their slides, they would instead just copy and paste a picture and then, scale it up. And that's not even how you properly do that. So it completely blurs the picture and doesn't do anything for the resolution. And then they put like yellow text over it because they need to see the text. And instead they could have just removed the background image and just went with some cool color scheme. I don't know. That's just my business. Yeah, but there's so much like that school could be doing, because it's such an archaic system in our modern society. It's such an old system hell-bent on just focusing on these tests, these grades, these tests. And they've enforced grades so much that they aren't actually, enforcing learning. They don't make you want to learn. They make you want to just memorize things. And they take the fun out of various, learning topics. Like, for example, reading. You read so much in school and you're forced to read so much that it becomes less of an entertainment thing. Like, you're doing it to entertain yourself or, just to learn in your free time, to more of a chore. And that's where I have a problem with that. Because reading is such an exciting thing, but they make it into a chore where it's not fun anymore for anyone. And the same can be said for any subject in school, when you have to do it so much that it becomes less enjoyable for you. And that's kind of the issue I have, is you don't enjoy things anymore after school. You don't enjoy learning and the concept of learning. Yeah, and there's just a lot of things that school could have done. Like, for example, they could enforce things that are more important than learning. I mean, not learning, but things that are more important than this memorization. Because you're only doing this for grades. You're only doing this for a number, for a GPA, for a number, or just for a statistic in the school's, ranking, to make them, get more funding and things like that. You only do that for the school themselves, and you're not doing it for you. You're not doing it so that you can learn this. You're doing it so that school can make a paycheck off of you, and get high enough statistically. And that becomes an issue when students are less of students and more of just a number to people. And I know there are some very good teachers out there, but for a large amount of them, they're only working to get paid. And that sucks. You should do what you do for enjoyment and not for money. So schools are basically, they're enabling the belief that you learn by memorizing things, by writing the same sentence tons and tons of times, and that if you, cram a book before the night before a test, you're going to be okay. And you're not learning anything for lifelong purposes. There's so many things that I could have learned that weren't what the school taught me. Like, for example, I'm not gonna largely use knowledge of World War II for the 17th billion time in my school career, because there was a lot of subjects that were just repeated. There was a lot of repetition in a lot of different subjects, especially history. History was such a, for lack of a better word, clusterfuck. It was such a clusterfuck because they just, they taught the same things in rotation like every 2 years. You would learn about the great wars of America, like American Revolution, things of that nature, so many times, and you would learn it repeatedly. And I can understand, not trying to make students ignorant, but at the same time, you are pushing too much with the American Revolution and things like that. And you're not focusing on anything else, and that's a big problem for me. That's a huge, huge problem, that you're not giving us variety, you're giving us one thing, and that's a problem. You're giving us the same thing over and over again. There's just lots of things that school could be doing better, and I wish it was better, because I hated school. I hated going to school growing up. And that sucks to say, because you should enjoy going to school. You should enjoy bettering yourself through education. Like, that should be an enjoyable subject for you. That should be something you enjoy doing, and you should not feel like it's a job. And it's not a job. It should be something that is taking fun, like, it's fond in most people's eyes. But to put into perspective, I hated math. I did math so much that I hated it. I had a teacher tell me when I was learning my multiplication tables that because I was struggling, that she told me to skip it. I'm not going to need it for division. Skip it. We're going to go into division. It's not a problem. And I will definitely say that that crippled me. It very much crippled me in math. And math was never a strong subject for me, but once I skipped multiplication tables, it basically solidified the fact that I was going to do poorly in math for a very long time, at least until calculators became more prominent in school and it was more of something to use, such as high school, where calculators are very prominent and it's less about mental math. But yeah, I was terrible at math. And then it came to the point where I just barely missed like the threshold of passing for some state standardized test, for some state mandated test, and I came within like a hair's, just a little hair of passing. So instead of, just letting it go, they decided, hey, math is important, and you know what, no child left behind. Math is really important. Let's give this student, because he struggles in math, let's give him 3 math classes. Three math classes total for 1 year. And let's see how that affects him. And because I didn't do 3 math classes, so I had a basic math, my standard math class, because I was an advanced student, that was advanced math. And I also had remedial math, so I was in both advanced math and remedial math. And then I was also in, we had these extra learning times, like these ELT programs, where students were allowed to learn things that had nothing to do with the average curriculum. So basically, like, kind of think electives, but still kind of controlled by a teacher, I guess. I can't explain it very well. But I also had a math class for that. So in my own free-form kind of curriculum thing where I was allowed to learn something that wasn't quite the core subjects of school, I was learning math. And can we see the issue here, that I was learning math in something that I should have been learning, something that wasn't a core curriculum or core subject. So like while my friends were taking things like a very intro to yearbook things and fun things, just very exciting things, I was stuck with math. I was stuck doing more arithmetic, and that was a problem. And basically they shoved so much math down my throat that I despised math. I loathed this subject, and it was terrible. I hated math. I stopped doing math work. It was terrible, and that's because from that point on, I realized that I was never going to use any of this, that I had no use for it, and I didn't want to learn it because I didn't see a purpose. I did not see a purpose in learning all these equations and these functions, and why? I'm not going to use it very often. I'm not going to put it into use, I guess. I'm not going to apply it to anything. And from that point on, I started teaching myself a lot of different things, and like I've learned things that I'm kind of interested in. Like, for example, I learned a lot about, as we saw in a previous video, I've learned a lot about the deep web. I've been there and I've studied it, and I've kind of taken part in it and just seen how it is, and I've formed my own opinions on that I probably wouldn't have if I didn't take it into my own hands. I probably would have been spoon-fed by the media on how to feel about that if it ever came back out to the media again. I learned a lot about computer operating systems. I dabble in it enough that I kind of feel safe to say that I'm pretty capable of it. And there's a lot of things that I taught myself, and I'm glad that I taught myself. And at the same time, I give school credit, because if I never would have been forced to do math the way they did, I probably never would have taken learning into my own hands and started doing things that I wanted to learn. I definitely feel like school should be better, and that we need a change. Like, no matter what, school needs to change. And I am just talking about high school and middle schools and things of that nature, because they're not performing well enough for the students that that they have. So we should definitely try to work on that. Like, we should try on working on making school something entertaining again, and something that is actually useful to us, and not something that wastes our time for 8 hours a day just trying to be a number in the school system. It breeds a sort of competitiveness where it comes to these numerical grades. I said graves. Grades. It breeds competitiveness for these numerical grades. And that's a problem, because you don't want to be competing for something like a GPA or something like that. It's only going to affect colleges, and that's probably in the least amount where it's going to affect that. Because if you stress that, students are going to do what happened at my high school, and because we weren't graded by the weight of the course, we were just grading as a whole cumulative GPA, you're gonna have students that take something like gym class and end up as honor graduates, and also take easy classes such as gym class and chorus, and end up as our valedictorians. And when you kind of breed that competitiveness within the students, some things like that does happen, and it's kind of a problem that it's not based purely on academics or just how much you know. And school also kind of it creates the way that if you aren't numerically smart, then you're not smart. You're stupid. You get these remedial classes because you're not smart based on the numbers and based on statistics, and that's a huge problem. I say everything in this video has been a huge problem so far. That's because in my head, it's all a huge problem. It's all a problem that needs to be solved and needs to be fixed. But it all needs to be fixed, and we haven't been focusing on that. In fact, I will say we pay more for things like military than we pay for education. And with, children being our future, as it's so commonly referred to, there isn't much being done. And there's not a lot being done. And we stress different school things, like different ideas for school that should be in place. Like, for example, my school had a idea of differentiation. And I use air quotes around that because it wasn't different for anyone. The idea was that different students need different types of teaching methods, I guess. Like, different students have different levels of how they should be taught. And it wasn't ever enforced. Their idea of a differentiation was advanced courses, remedial courses, and, the middle. But that was no different than what we had before, where we had advanced, remedial, and basic. I don't know, there's just so much that needs to be fixed, and for some reason it's not. We think it's okay the way it is, and we stress that this old, archaic, obsolete system is still relevant in today's society, and it still needs to be enforced to the next level and mandated and controlled, and it's terrible. It's terrible for the students, it's terrible for the teachers, it's terrible for all involved. You get students who don't want to learn it. You get students who don't care anymore, who don't want to take the time out and learn things because they realized how useless everything is to them. And I met a lot of kids who felt similarly to how I did, and felt no need in doing school other than just trying to make your parents happy. Other than that, it was a job. You didn't care. You didn't have to care because you could easily memorize something and then ace the test. There's no critical thinking involved in that. And yeah, I have a huge bone to pick with that. I just have a lot of issues with it, and the list goes on, I guess, for me. We need a change for school. It needs to happen. That's kind of what I'm taking away from all this. This is kind of the TLDW, too long didn't watch, for those people that they don't care enough to watch it. Because I realize it's not something most people care about. It's not something anyone really pays attention to. Even the parents who watch their children go to these schools and have to deal with trying to help their child with this type of math that they didn't even learn in high school. They just think it's normal, and it's kind of swept under the rug that students aren't getting what they need. They're not learning skills that they could use, like, how to boil water or change a tire or anything like that. At least in my experience. School removes the innate curiosity that children have. It removes the creativity that they have by focusing more on academics or sports than on focusing on the creative side of things, and that's not fair. You don't want to be curious anymore when you kind of get sucked. The life gets sucked out of you from school all the time, and that's a fair point to make. Anyway, that was a sombering thought. So yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed the video. This is very much different for me. I've recorded this several times because I haven't been comfortable with it in the slightest bit yet, and I think this time I'm finally gonna put it up. So if you're seeing this and you've watched this part, and leave a comment. Like, I want to hear some discussion about the subject and how you felt school should be and how you feel as it should be now, and if any changes need to be made. And I want to hear like other people's opinions on this. So yeah, leave a comment below if you kind of want to have some insightful discussion with me about it. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't. I completely understand. Opinions, they're not for everyone, but I guess we'll see. I'm going to be doing more of these, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to be trying to push out one of these every week, which is going to be very interesting because considering how long this one took. But I feel like if I give myself a schedule, I think I can do it. As for gaming, that's kind of on the back pedal right now. I'm trying to focus on this. I'm trying to focus on these ranty things. So yeah, I'm going to be doing that. And the next one should be coming to you next Saturday, maybe. Depending on how long it takes me to record it and figure it out. As to the topic at hand, I have no idea. I don't know if I want it to be a rant or what. I may go back to deep web or something. So I guess we'll see. Then with that, I'll see you guys later.